Here is something that should genuinely disturb you. Right now, scientists do not have a single drug that can reverse Alzheimer's disease. Not one. The newest medications on the market, the ones that cost tens of thousands of dollars every year and require patients to sit in specialized clinics hooked up to an IV, can only slow the disease down slightly in certain patients. They do not stop it, they do not reverse it, and they come with terrifying side effects, including brain swelling and brain bleeding. So while medicine struggles to find an answer, millions of families are watching their loved ones disappear in slow motion, memory by memory, year by year. But here is the part that nobody is talking about loudly enough. In certain parts of the world, dementia is nearly non-existent, and the reason why may already be sitting in your kitchen cabinet.
Think about this. Rural India has one of the absolute lowest rates of Alzheimer's disease anywhere on the planet. Parts of the Mediterranean have remarkably low dementia rates. Okinawa, Japan, has historically recorded some of the lowest numbers ever measured in any population. These places are not connected by their wealth, their healthcare systems, or their genetics. What they share is something far simpler. They cook with specific spices every single day. Not occasionally, not as a supplement, as a way of life. Meal after meal, decade after decade. And when scientists started looking closely at what those spices actually contain, what they found was nothing short of extraordinary. The compounds inside these spices cross the blood-brain barrier. They target the exact molecular processes that destroy the brain in dementia. And the peer-reviewed research backing this up now spans thousands of published studies.
Before we get to the 5 spices, you need to understand what is actually happening inside a brain that is developing dementia, because once you see the full picture, everything else will make much more sense. Your brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons, and each one connects to thousands of others through junctions called synapses. Information moves through these connections as electrical signals, guided by chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. This network is what allows you to remember faces, form sentences, make decisions, and recognize the people you love. Dementia is the slow, silent destruction of this network, and the terrifying truth is that it begins 20 to 30 years before a single symptom appears. By the time someone forgets a name or loses their keys more than usual, the brain has already been under attack for decades. There are 5 specific processes driving this destruction. The first is amyloid plaque buildup, where sticky protein fragments clump together between brain cells and block the communication between neurons. The second is tau tangle formation, where a protein that holds the brain cell's internal transport system together breaks apart and collapses, essentially starving the neuron until it dies. The third is neuroinflammation, where the brain's own immune cells go haywire and start attacking the neurons they were supposed to protect. The fourth is oxidative stress, where the enormous amount of oxygen the brain consumes generates damaging free radicals that the aging brain can no longer neutralize fast enough. The fifth is the loss of a critical growth protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is the fertilizer that keeps neurons alive and helps the brain form new connections. When these 5 processes are all running simultaneously, the brain loses the battle. Every single case of dementia involves some combination of these 5, and every one of the 5 spices you are about to learn targets at least one of them directly.
The first spice is turmeric, and the reason it leads this list is because the science behind its active compound, curcumin, is absolutely staggering. Curcumin is the bright yellow pigment that gives turmeric its color, and it has been studied more extensively than almost any other natural compound in relation to brain health. When researchers started looking at why people in rural India develop Alzheimer's at roughly 1/4 the rate of Americans in the same age group, turmeric consumption kept rising to the top of the list. Adults in traditional Indian households consume between 80 and 200 milligrams of curcumin every single day. That's a lot by pharmaceutical standards, but when you consume it daily, from childhood through old age, the cumulative effect on the brain is enormous. The brain never has a single day without curcumin available, and that uninterrupted protection appears to be exactly what makes the difference.
Here is what curcumin actually does inside the brain. It physically binds to amyloid beta fragments and prevents them from sticking together into plaques. It goes even further by breaking apart plaques that have already formed, turning large toxic clumps into smaller fragments the brain can clear away. It blocks the chemical process that causes tau protein to become sticky and tangle, protecting the internal transport system of the neuron. It calms overactivated immune cells in the brain, shifting them away from their destructive mode and back to their protective role. It is one of the most powerful natural antioxidants ever studied. And it doesn't just neutralize free radicals directly, it actually switches on the gene that instructs your body to produce its own internal antioxidant enzymes. And it increases the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor in the hippocampus, the memory center of the brain. One compound, all 5 dementia pathways. No pharmaceutical drug currently available comes close to that range.
There is one critical detail about curcumin you have to know, because without it, most of the benefit is wasted. Curcumin is very poorly absorbed from the gut on its own. If you simply sprinkle turmeric on your food and call it done, most of that curcumin passes straight through your digestive system without ever entering your bloodstream. This is why you must always combine turmeric with 2 things: black pepper and fat. Black pepper contains a compound called piperine that increases curcumin absorption by up to 2,000%. And because curcumin is fat-soluble, consuming it with olive oil or another healthy fat dramatically improves how much gets absorbed. A teaspoon of turmeric, a generous pinch of black pepper, and a drizzle of olive oil in a simple salad dressing is one of the most powerful brain protection habits you can build. And that naturally brings us to the second spice. Black pepper is not just a helper for turmeric. It is a powerful brain protective spice in its own right, and most people have no idea. Its active compound, piperine, crosses the blood-brain barrier directly and produces effects that stand entirely on their own. One of the most important things piperine does is inhibit an enzyme called monoamine oxidase B, which breaks down dopamine in the brain. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter responsible for motivation, focus, and executive thinking, and its levels decline significantly with age. By slowing the breakdown of dopamine, piperine helps keep levels higher for longer, supporting mental sharpness and drive. Interestingly, this is the same general mechanism used by a class of prescription medications given to Parkinson's patients, but piperine delivers a gentler, natural version of that effect through something you grind onto your food every single day.
Piperine also slows the breakdown of acetylcholine,
The neurotransmitter that is devastated in Alzheimer's disease. When the neurons that produce acetylcholine die, the brain's ability to form and retrieve memories collapses. By inhibiting the enzyme that degrades acetylcholine, piperine allows each molecule to stay active longer, strengthening the memory signal. This is the exact same mechanism used by donepezil and rivastigmine, the most commonly prescribed Alzheimer's medications in the world. You are not hearing that compared to a supplement. You are hearing it compared to actual prescription drugs. Beyond that, piperine supports glutathione, which is the most important antioxidant that your brain cells produce internally.
And research using brain imaging technology has confirmed that glutathione depletion in the hippocampus is one of the earliest measurable signs that cognitive decline has already begun. A peppermill at your table is not a small thing. Use it generously and use freshly ground pepper because piperine degrades quickly after grinding.
The third spice is rosemary, and it targets a mechanism the first two do not fully address: the loss of new brain cell growth. Most people were taught in school that you are born with all the brain cells you will ever have, and that the brain cannot make new ones. That belief was overturned in the late 1990s when researchers discovered that new neurons are actually born throughout life in the hippocampus, the region most critical for forming memories. This process, called neurogenesis, continues even in people in their 70s and 80s. However, it slows dramatically with age, and in a brain developing Alzheimer's disease, it slows even more severely. Rosemary contains a compound called carnosic acid that has been shown to directly stimulate the growth of new neurons in the hippocampus, promote their survival, and support their integration into functional memory circuits. That is not a minor finding. That is extraordinary.
What makes carnosic acid especially clever is when and how it becomes active. Under normal conditions, it sits relatively dormant. But when it encounters the free radicals, inflamed tissue, and oxidative damage that accumulate in the aging brain, it transforms chemically into its active form. This means it concentrates its full power precisely in the areas that need it most: the damaged zones, the inflamed regions, the areas drowning in amyloid and oxidative stress. Most antioxidants spray their effect evenly everywhere in the body, wasting much of it on healthy tissue. Carnosic acid targets the problem areas first. Once activated, it also switches on the same antioxidant gene that curcumin activates, but through a different set of pathways, meaning the two spices work together rather than duplicating each other. Rosemary also blocks the aggregation of amyloid, inhibits acetylcholinesterase, just like black pepper does, and its aromatic compounds provide a measurable cognitive boost simply through inhalation while you were cooking. The carnosic acid survives heat well, so roasting vegetables with rosemary sprigs and olive oil is both delicious and genuinely protective for your brain. The fourth spice is cinnamon, and it targets a pathway that most people have never connected to dementia: the relationship between blood sugar and brain destruction. Researchers have started calling Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes, and that name is earned. Here is why. Your brain cells run almost entirely on glucose, and insulin is the hormone that helps them take it in. As insulin resistance develops with age, even subtle subclinical insulin resistance that never gets diagnosed, the brain cells begin to struggle to absorb fuel. They start to slowly starve, even when blood sugar levels look acceptable on a standard test. Starving neurons produce more inflammatory signals, more free radicals, and become more vulnerable to amyloid and tau damage. But the connection runs even deeper than that. The enzyme responsible for clearing amyloid from the brain is the same enzyme the body uses to process insulin. When insulin levels are chronically elevated, that enzyme is consumed handling the insulin backlog and has almost no capacity left to clear amyloid. The plaques accumulate faster because the clearance system is overwhelmed. Studies using brain imaging have confirmed that even people who are not diabetic, but who have higher than optimal blood sugar, show measurably smaller hippocampal volumes. There is no truly safe threshold. Every incremental rise in average blood sugar is linked to incremental rises in dementia risk.
Cinnamon works against this in two completely independent ways.
First, it contains a compound that mimics insulin at the cellular receptor level, helping brain cells absorb glucose more efficiently, even when insulin resistance has reduced the effectiveness of the body's own insulin. This directly relieves the fuel starvation that makes neurons more vulnerable to dementia-related damage. Second, cinnamon's flavor compound, cinnamaldehyde, binds directly to tau protein and prevents it from misfolding into the tangles that collapse neurons from the inside. This anti-tau activity is rare among natural compounds, and it gives cinnamon a unique and valuable role that none of the other spices on this list can fully duplicate. One important warning: the cinnamon you most commonly find in grocery stores is cassia cinnamon, which contains a compound that can stress the liver at daily doses over time. You want Ceylon cinnamon specifically, sometimes labeled as true cinnamon or Cinnamomum verum. It tastes slightly sweeter. The fifth spice is sage, and it has earned its place here because it holds the strongest direct evidence for improving memory in actual human clinical trials of any culinary spice ever tested. The name sage comes from the Latin word meaning to save or to heal, and traditional cultures across Europe and the Middle East used it specifically for memory and mental clarity for centuries before any laboratory existed to explain why. Modern science has confirmed what those traditions observed. Sage is the most potent natural inhibitor of acetylcholinesterase on this entire list, stronger than black pepper or rosemary in the specific role, working through multiple compounds that block the acetylcholine-destroying enzyme at different binding sites simultaneously. In a randomized, placebo-controlled human clinical trial, published in a peer-reviewed pharmacology journal, healthy older adults who took sage extract showed significantly better word recall, faster information processing, improved alertness, and greater calmness compared to the placebo group, with those effects appearing within hours of a single dose. In a second clinical trial conducted specifically in patients with mild to moderate Alzheimer's disease, sage extract produced significant improvements in cognitive function over a 16-week period. These are not animal studies or test tube findings. These are controlled human trials showing that a kitchen herb measurably improves memory in real people. Sage also improves cerebral blood flow through a compound called 1,8-cineol, which relaxes the blood vessels supplying the brain, allowing more oxygen and nutrients to reach the hippocampus and cortex, while improving the clearance of metabolic waste, including amyloid. And what makes sage uniquely special is that 1,8-cineol is also an aromatic compound, which means it enters your bloodstream through your nose while you cook. Smelling sage while it heats in a pan delivers an immediate, fast-acting cognitive boost through inhalation, while eating the sage provides a slower, sustained release of its protective phenolic compounds. You get two delivery systems in one herb, fast and slow, immediate and long-term. Research has also found that the memory-enhancing effect of sage is actually strongest in older adults who have the lowest baseline cognitive performance, which is exactly the population that needs it most and exactly the pattern you would expect from a compound that preserves the acetylcholine that is already being depleted. Use fresh or dried sage generously with poultry, squash, root vegetables, or steep 4 to 5 fresh leaves in hot water for 10 minutes and drink it as a tea in the afternoon when mental clarity tends to dip. Now let us talk about how to actually make all 5 of these spices part of your daily life without it feeling like a medical protocol.
Every single morning, stir half a teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon into your oatmeal, coffee, or smoothie. This is your daily insulin sensitizing baseline, and it takes 5 seconds. Grind fresh black pepper generously onto every savory meal throughout the day, without exception. Think of black pepper as the foundation that enhances and delivers every other spice more effectively. At lunch, make a simple dressing with olive oil, a full teaspoon of turmeric, a generous grind of black pepper, and a squeeze of lemon.
Mix a jar of it at the start of the week and keep it in the refrigerator. In the afternoon, brew a cup of sage tea. 4 or 5 fresh leaves steeped for 10 minutes gives you an immediate boost in cerebral blood flow and acetylcholine support right when your afternoon focus starts to fade. At dinner, cook generously with rosemary. Roast vegetables with rosemary sprigs and olive oil. Season chicken or fish with rosemary, turmeric, and pepper together. The carnosic acid survives heat, so cooking does not reduce its power. The total monthly cost of this entire protocol is less than a single prescription copay, and every ingredient is already in a grocery store near you.
The window for meaningful intervention is open right now. Not after a diagnosis, not after the first memory lapses. Now, while your neurons are still alive, while your synapses are still firing, while your hippocampus still contains stem cells capable of producing new neurons. The 5 processes that cause dementia begin silently decades before any symptom appears. But the 5 spices in this protocol intervene at every single stage. They block amyloid accumulation. They protect tau protein. They calm the brain's overactivated immune cells. They strengthen the brain's internal antioxidant defenses. They stimulate the growth of new brain cells. And they do all of this safely, affordably, and deliciously through food every single day for the rest of your life. The pharmaceutical industry has spent billions of dollars searching for a drug that does what these 5 spices do together. They have not found it yet. You do not have to wait for them. Your brain is being built or broken by what you put into it every single day. And now you know exactly what to reach for.